Have you ever wondered what 35 hours of DCS looks like? Well, I got the video for you. Welcome to Mawg Games.
First day on the job and things took a turn for the worse. There's something going on with it. It's overheated, the coolant is depleted. It's starting to boil up inside.
Alright, so 35 hours in DCS is significant for a number of reasons. First of all, that's the amount of time it has taken me to develop the skills to complete this mission without dying. Alright, 35 hours. Also, 35 hours would be considered a typical playtime for a AAA game title, alright? Anywhere from 20 to 40 hours would be considered a full game in today's market. In DCS, 35 hours is the learning curve required in order to complete a mission. Now, of those 35 hours, not all of it is spent in the cockpit getting flight time. And these 35 hours don't account for all the research and YouTube videos you're going to have to watch in order to operate your aircraft. Now, the first several hours of your DCS journey is going to be in the settings menu. You're going to be trying to dial this game into your specific computer and what it can handle. After you get that straightened out, maybe an hour, alright? The next several hours are going to be you trying to figure out why you can't fly your plane. More than likely, it's because the bindings, if you're not just running straight keyboard and mouse, the bindings are a mess. Okay? And you're going to spend hours in that binding screen trying to fix it. Since you can't figure out the bindings, you're going to turn to the internet to do some research. At some point during your research, you're going to come across a video that's going to let you know that people can create their own bindings for an Xbox controller, a PlayStation controller, a joystick, and then upload them for other users to then download and add to their game. This is a game changer. You will now spend the next several hours downloading and trying out dozens of different users' bindings to try to figure out the best one for you, what you need it to do, and what kind of equipment you have. Once you get that all squared away, we are now finally ready to fly the plane. At this point, we at least have 2.5 to 3 hours in settings and binding menus, maybe a half an hour in the actual cockpit crashing or not being able to even taxi, and probably about another hour, hour and a half worth of research trying to figure out just how to get the damn plane off the ground. Now, if you're smart, you started in the Su-25T Frogfoot, because it's free. And if you were able to successfully get it off the runway and into the air, the first time you attempt to either pitch, roll, or bank, a lady started screaming at you in Russian and the plane was unresponsive. The next several hours are spent trying to figure out how to keep the plane in the air and at stable flight while maneuvering. Alright, so at this point we're at about 8 hours in-game with another 3 hours of outside research. Right now, we can take off and we can fly around, pitch, roll, bank. We can maneuver, okay? The lady isn't screaming at us anymore. Now that we're up in the air and flying around, we could go ahead and learn how to land. But we are way too excited for that. We're going to go right to weapon systems. You are going to spend a huge portion of that 35 hours learning these systems. Okay? Learning them is one thing. Implementing them is a whole other. So there's going to be a lot of research to figure out how to use the weapon systems, and then there's going to be a lot of practice using the weapon systems, figuring out exactly how best to implement them. Once you finally become proficient enough in a few different weapon types, you're going to spend probably the next half dozen hours just flying around, having fun, and blowing stuff up. This is roughly at the 20 to 25 hour mark in-game, with another, let's say, 6 or so of outside research. All this just to get to the point where you are flying around and engaging targets. At this point, you're feeling pretty confident in yourself, and you believe you're ready to take on a mission from start to finish. Takeoff, ingress, egress, landing, okay? So you scroll through the missions, and you find, let's just say, long day. You find long day, and you say, hey, that's the mission for me. Let's take a shot at it. Now, you're going to run this mission probably several times before you even get close to beating it without dying. Now, you could beat it. You could respawn your plane and just keep going until the mission ends, until you kill everything. But to take off, to go fight, to come back and land all on one life with one plane is a feat that's not going to happen for you right away. After running back this mission for hours, you finally destroy all the targets, are ordered to return to base, and you're still on your first life and first plane. So you return to base. You see the runway, and you approach for your landing. Halfway through your approach, you remember that you haven't tried landing this plane yet. You were way too excited for that, remember? And you're going to come down at way too steep of an angle of attack. And as soon as your wheels hit that runway, you're going to bounce like 50 feet in the air. Okay? And you crash and you burn on your landing after you spent that whole time destroying targets, dodging missiles and artillery fire and tanks and whatnot, only to die crashing and burning on a failed landing attempt. But that's okay, right? Because now you got it figured out. You know exactly what you did wrong. So you're going to go ahead and run back the mission. You're going to complete all the objectives, and you're going to return to base again. This time, you correct your mistakes from the first landing attempt. And you touch down nice and smooth. Now you're rolling along the runway, feeling pretty good about yourself. Only to realize that you're not slowing down fast enough, and you are quickly running out of runway. After you ultimately run out of pavement and end up crashing and burning at the end of the runway yet again, you go ahead and run it back from the beginning one more time. This time, it's happening. You're going to do it. You're going to finish this mission. And after another failed landing attempt, it's back to the internet for more research. So you decide to pull up a Su-25T landing video on YouTube. Come to find out, this damn thing has parachutes. So, now you finally have the missing piece of information you need to successfully land this plane. At this point, we are 34 hours into our DCS journey. We have roughly another 10 hours of internet research into various systems, planes, strategies, tips and tricks on how to fly. You run back the mission one more time. An hour later, you finish up, you are heading back to base, and you go to touchdown for your landing. Your wheels hit the tarmac, your parachutes shoot open, your brakes lock up, and the plane comes to a stop. You are on the runway, you are intact, you have only used one plane, you only had one life, you have taken off, you have ingressed, you have attacked, you have egressed, and you have now landed and come to a complete stop. Congratulations. It only took you 35 hours. Like I said at the beginning of the video, 35 hours is about the standard length of a fairly competent AAA title, okay? Anything between 20 and 40 hours is deemed worthy of 60 or 70 bucks, okay? The price of a full game. Like I said, that's the learning curve, okay? Now, that's a little bit facetious. I probably could have learned everything in, let's say, 15 to 20 to accomplish this. But honestly, once you get up and you're shooting things and you're targeting stuff, and you're taking out enemies, it's fun. So you spend a lot of time just jumping into the instant action missions and doing that and neglecting everything else. Neglecting taking off, landing, navigation, all that. All right? So we could have definitely streamlined this 35 hours, but 35 hours is literally how long it took me to be able to have the skills necessary to complete this mission. My first successful landing did not happen until the 34-hour mark. Now, I only attempted 3, I believe, in that time. 2 or 3, maybe a 4th. Oh, there was one night one I couldn't even get anywhere near, and I didn't know how to use the instruments, so that just wasn't happening. All right, but yeah, so 34 hours is when I successfully completed my first landing, and then I redid the mission, and you are watching it now. Now, this is a game where once you complete the initial learning curve, you're still not done. Any new plane or jet that you get into, there is going to be a learning curve on how to use those systems, unless it's similar to one that you already know, okay? They all somewhat work in similar fashions, but there's differences, and I would say every jet is probably going to be a 4 to 8 hour learning curve, plus outside research. Like, I know some of the jets in this game are not the most straightforward on how to even cold start, so you're going to be looking up videos on how to do that. So the learning actually never really stops in this game. And honestly, I shouldn't even refer to it as a game, because that's not what this is. This is a straight up simulator. This is a flight sim. I've been flight simming for a long time, okay? Since before it was cool. Since like early Microsoft Flight Sim days in the mid to late 90s or whatever. There was also like F-22 Raptor back then and Falcon 4.0. So I was a flight simmer in the mid to late 90s. So I have a lot of experience from back in those days, and currently I have like 350 some odd hours in VTOL VR, which is another VR-based flight sim. So I'm an experienced flight simmer, and I have familiarity with how these systems are going to work and what to expect from a sim like this, not a game. And it still took me that long to get my shit together in DCS, okay? So, you guys, if you're new, you're looking at 20 to 40 hours learning curve, all right? And that's from an experienced flight simmer, so you can kind of extrapolate from there. And obviously, your mileage may vary, and going to depend on a lot of different factors, what you kind of know already going in, how organized you are when you're learning a new game. If you're going to just come into this and you want to just jump in blind and figure it out on your own, it'll take you 1,000 hours, all right, to get to this point. If you're willing to sit down and kind of do the research beforehand and during your initial journey into DCS, you could probably shave 15 plus hours, okay? If you know exactly, you know, you talk to somebody who plays it and they tell you exactly what to learn, how to learn it, you know, how to set up bindings and settings and all that, they're going to shave off hours for you as well. So, you know, this could be accomplished, let's say, in 10 hours, 15 hours, under the right circumstances. But still, this is not something that you just jump into. This is something that you have to put effort into learning if you want to get any sort of enjoyment out of it whatsoever. Well, I think that'll do it. I think that pretty much covers everything. Again, this is what 35 hours worth of DCS looks like. Watch my landing. Watch my approach here. I forgot to turn off my autopilot, and I was fighting my autopilot on my 5-mile final approach. The entire time nearly until the very end. Still stick this landing. Still stick it. But, made it a little sketchier than it had to be. But that'll do it, though. That'll be the video. Thank you so much for watching. Mawg Games is out. Peace.
Goes up in flames, the earth begins to shake. I start to shiver and quake. I'm such a fool, there's nothing we can do except for pray that luck is true.